This is the Elder Scrolls Lorecast, and we have a big news breaking update right now for your ears only. I don't know how those things actually go or what anybody actually says when they do them.
That's fine. That was a great news ticker. You did a stellar job.
Thank you. Welcome everybody to the show and to the live stream. All of our live friends who are in chat, and I'm your host Tom or Robots, and this is Lotus of Doom, my co-host. Hello. Lotus, how's it going? How you doing, buddy?
Things are well. Things are very well. Lots of big news happening in the Elder Scrolls Online side of things, even though that won't really be our super topic, although it will be something of interest coming up, as if we hadn't just been hinting at that with our news ticker update, which was the highest of quality.
Yes, that was a sound effect directly from one of the news channels. I can't say their name or they will sue me. So we got big news. We're not going to go over this. If you've been in the know at all today, this is Thursday. It's 9 p.m. Eastern. All the big news dropped today about everybody who's getting these previews of some of the new stuff in the new year of content for ESO. And you've probably seen multiple posts about that and lots of other people and podcasts saying, we're going to talk about this soon, including Lotus's other podcast, Tales of Tamriel. So yes, we're going to let them do that. They're going to talk about that stuff because we've got lore to tackle, but we also have some big news kind of related to that. We have the one and only Rich from ESO joining us in 3 weeks. It's going to be
yes, we do.
3 weeks from now. So 3 weeks from today, what day of the week is that? That is May 6th.
6th, yes.
May 6th, he will be joining us live on the show, and we are going to be asking him some questions and getting some insight directly from the guy who is behind the scenes with all the stuff going on in ESO. So if you want to be here and be there for the live thing and maybe even throw in some questions, I don't know if he'll have time to answer them, but you never know. So I can't say for sure. I do know that we had to send some questions ahead of time, and we had pulled some of you guys for some of those questions. So he will at least be answering those questions, but you never know. It's a live show. He might see somebody post something in chat and go, well, here's what I can tell you about that. You know how that stuff goes.
Exactly. So yeah, very exciting stuff to have Rich Lambert come join us. And being the creative director, one of the things that's so interesting about that to me is he's really when you think of a creative director, that's one of the things that he's got his hands in all of the things in Elder Scrolls, which is, again, when you have interviews with different devs, there's a lot of technical stuff to the side of things, but spoiler, as I've talked to Rich many different times, he has pretty deep roots in the Elder Scrolls series. So this year, which was kind of why we invited him, is pretty strongly related to him. We'll leave the details of why until he comes join us.
We don't want to spill the beans on this at all?
Right. No, we don't want to spill any beans.
All right, well, spill the beans.
Yep. So, but it's pretty well tied into a lot with his history in gaming and all sorts of good stuff like that. So very excited to have him come join us in 3 weeks.
Yeah, I'm sure some of you guys will know what we're talking about, but we'll reveal more in just a few weeks' time. So make sure that you are here if you want to be a part of that live 9 p.m. Eastern on May 6th at twitch.tv/robotsradio, where we do the live show. And we'd love to have all you guys stop on by and join us for that chat, because it's going to be awesome. We got some really good questions for him, and I'm excited to get to talk to him again. Super nice guy. It's going to be great. So anyway, and similarly large news, probably a little bit bigger news. I have ice cream also. So it just kind of showed up right last minute, and I have to eat it while doing a podcast. So that's fun too.
Pretty important too. I mean, to be fair.
Yeah. So what are we talking about today? We are continuing our series on the divines and the Adric powers of the world, Tamriel, whatever you want to call it, Mundus,
the Pantheon,
everything, whatever. Anyway, those things. We're talking about those things. We went over Akatosh and Archay recently, and side note, I forgot to mention when we were talking about the Yakutans that Tuwaka is kind of the corollary for Archay. just totally skipped over that. I didn't add it to the notes accidentally. But that is totally a thing.
It didn't click until obviously the nod to Eremetheus, who brought that up. I assume a lot of people know Eremetheus for the advanced version of lore with written on uncertainty. So big shout out to him for catching that, because he's right. And it's funny because once he mentioned it, it was like, oh yeah, that was probably a parallel that was absolutely worth mentioning.
I just totally, I
didn't catch it either. So it's good to make the note.
I think I was pasting things into our note thing, and then I just thought I had copied and pasted it over, and then just didn't notice it. And in the midst of the show, it didn't occur to me that like, oh, we didn't go over that part. So thank you for that.
Tuaka thing.
We just kind of skipped over it. So thank you, Eremetheus, and anybody else who out there who's like listening to that episode going, wait a minute, what about Tuaka? So real quick, Tuaka is known as the tricky god of the Yakutans. The god of souls, the god of the far shores, and before the creation of the world, he was the god of nobody really cares, which is a wonderful title.
The greatest title ever.
Right. This is why we should have gone over it, because he's so interesting.
Yep.
Then Tall Papa undertook the creation of the Walkabout, and Tuaka found a purpose. He became the caretaker of the far shores and continues to help Red Guards find their ways to the afterlife. So the whole life and death thing, the bridge to the afterlife, there's a connection there between Tuaka and Arkay, and they kind of fill similar roles in their pantheons. So there's a little bit more about that, but we'll save some of that for when we get into a little bit more about the Yakutan pantheon and some of the connections between each of those. That could totally be a topic for the future. But this episode, we're talking about, and I want to poll our audience, because Lotus and I say this differently. Is it Dibella or is it Dibella? I'm not going to tell you which of us says it which way, but we're going to take a poll. And from this point forward, I'm going to say Dibella.
And you might be right, because when you said it, so it's funny discussing it. I always read. It's one of those things you
read a lot.
Yeah,
you don't always hear it.
You read different.
Yeah,
I always thought you would. Like, I don't know, you would accentuate the whole beginning part, and I would kind of like, oh yeah, Dibella, and it's like, oh no, Dibella seems pretty likely as well.
I love the comments we're getting.
Neither in chat.
We're getting so Nikki is Stray Bullet 8 says Dibella. Wayward World Hopper says it's Dibella, normally Dibella when she's angry. I like that one. And then Sea Chaser says neither. it's always misread. It's neither. It's actually pronounced Loretta, but who knew? It's just a weird spelling. Anyway, Dibella is the goddess of beauty. She's the embodiment of beauty and teaches mortals to seek truth through beauty and worship. And of course, the stuff that we're reading comes from the UESP article about it, and we'll of course expand upon that a bit as we go. Those who follow the teachings of Dibella and propagate beauty and promote harmony are granted charm and grace. The goddess teaches that mortals should give themselves to love and commands them to open their hearts to, quote, the noble secrets of art and love. Treasure the gifts of friendship. Seek joy and inspiration in the mysteries of love. Barf. Like this is like, she's like the goddess of puking kittens who are also puking rainbows at the same time, right? Like this is
as sicky sweet as you can think. That's the idea of Dibella.
Yeah, but it's not just sicky sweet too. There's like a sexy side of this as well.
Oh yeah, it gets kinky once we get into this.
yeah. It goes on and says Dibella holds no limit on the number of lovers one may have. See, I told you. And demands focus.
That didn't take long.
That escalated quickly. Demands focus on the quality of the essence of love, not the quantity. So you can have multiple lovers as long as they're good lovers. You know what I'm saying? Don't just like take on anybody.
Yeah. No.
Like the Backstreet Boys.
Rated a B or better in order to.
Right. The Backstreet Boys are just right out. Like, I don't care who you are, where you came from, what you did, as long as you love me. Nope. That's no good. That is of no high quality. No good at all. So Backstreet Boys, you guys need to listen up. it goes on and says, she teaches that no matter the seed, if the shoot is nurtured with love, will not the flower be beautiful? I don't know, Dibella. Will it? Will it not? I suppose so.
Apparently.
Yeah, you are hinting at it, so I'm guessing the answer is yes. And blesses the love of those which is pure and untainted. So awesome. Okay, love, beauty, quality of love and beauty, these kinds of things, right? So, of course, with many of these Adric spirits, and Arche especially, she discouraged relations with the undead, such as vampires, and concurs with the teachings of Arche that vampires have impure spirits. The goddess makes her will known to mortals through her Sibyl, who is revealed to her priesthood via the ceremony known as the Exalted Protocol of the Dibellan Sibyl. The ceremony is known only to the priesthood of Dibella and is kept secret from the general population, including acolytes of other divines. Dibella is known as the divine who pays men in moans.
Which is...
Wow. Oh, man.
That is quite a byline to your sales pitch.
That's, yeah. Are you the man who has everything? Do you have more money than you need? Do you have multiple properties, a boat on the ocean, your own plane? Well, what about moans? I've got a deal for you.
Yeah, that is... That is always one of my favorite lines, because I was like, wow, that is that's quite a sales pitch from this divine. And again, the more we'll discuss with this, it's really a running theme of the sicky sweet love thing is kind of parallel to the really kinky side of everything. So
See, Chaser says new favorite Adra. So it continues and says, followers of Dibella are known to practice the Dibellan arts and bestow a mark of Dibella upon others. Critics of Dibella consider her a lustful and passionate goddess. So, yeah, you can see how this can be taken in different directions. And we've talked about how the worship of the divines, the worship of any gods, often it's debatable as to if that worship and that aspect and the understanding of that god comes from the god to mortals, or if it comes from the mortals back to the gods, like bestowing that on the gods and putting their own expectations on them. And you can see how even just different types of people, not to mention different cultures, might side a little bit more with the sticky sweet side of it, with the quality of love side of it, or with the amorous erotic side of it, just depending on which thing you resonate more with. And I mean, talk about humanity, and like some people resonate more with different aspects of that, exactly. Like my mom would be all about the motherly love and the let me bake you some cookies and, give you all the hugs and like that kind of side of it. Right. But then I know a number of people who would be on the other sides of these things. So it all just comes down to your perspective on it, I think, when it comes to the description of this. So, of course, she's worshipped like any of these other Daedra by, people who worship the Pantheon, the 8 or 9 divines, but then also individual other cultures that believe in her, or people who believe in her as a mix of their own deities. And it says here, Dibella and her worshippers are argued to have what can be considered a personal relationship, in contrast to the formal and impersonal relationship held by the worshippers of other divines. And this is interesting. I'll continue through all of this, and there's a point I want to make about this. A number of cults dedicated to Dibella can be found in Cyrodiil, High Rock, Hammerfell, and Skyrim, and are varied in their focus. Some cults of Dibella focus on women, artists, or aesthetics, while others concentrate on erotic instruction. Notice I was talking about how some focus more in one area and some focus on another, but they all tend to put that under the same label of Dibella. A house of Dibella will typically have 3 or 4 white cats within, as they are sacred to the goddess. When worshippers of Dibella wish to honor the Lady of Love by engaging in anonymous bestowal of affection, they don a porcelain Dibella's doll mask. And this is actually an item you can get in an Elder Scrolls Online. So the first line of this section talks about the personal relationship and how, and we've kind of talked about this before, you talk about like the flow of time in Akatosh, or life and death in Arcade, that these are kind of these, what was the word you used last time? Like these, ephemeral isn't the word you used, but they're kind of these abstract background kinds of concepts. The thing about love is that it's way more personal, right? Like, yeah, we all have a personal understanding of time, but it's unchangeable. It's immovable. We can't do anything about it. We all have a personal understanding of life and death. We all experience those things and experience them in other people, but there's nothing we can really do about it. Love, on the other hand, is something that changes and grows or goes away. It's something that we are involved with very intimately. So the idea that Dibella would be one of the few Aedra with which you can have a personal relationship with is unique, but it makes sense for her sphere that she's in control of.
Right. She's a bit more tangible than some of the other divines.
Yeah.
And again, in terms of, I guess, tangibility, if that's a word, which I'm not entirely sure that it is, but
it is now.
Yeah, it is now. You know what? We're going to double down on it, and that's what it is. But we're actually able to concretely say she is this. Dibella has a bit more of a concrete form as opposed to Arcade, and Akatosh is a dragon or whatever. But this is, the first specifically where there is a form, and the statues in game depict it. I mean, for the visual bit that I've been trying to do for everybody, this is her little shrine statue. For anybody who can see the visual version of this, sorry to the audio listeners, it kind of looks, I actually don't know how
it's like an upward facing flower.
Yeah,
with,
that's actually a good way
two
of
little curled pillars that come around the sides, which is interesting because even in Daggerfall, the symbolism we get, and I've got some images for us that can go up on screen here, is that, and this is very low res because it comes from Daggerfall, but I'll make it a little bit bigger. You've got like an Ankh type symbol next to a white flower. And the flower petals on this droop rather than going up like on your statue, but you can see that even back in Daggerfall, they had this concept of the flower, life, love, those kinds of things.
Yeah. So, and then when you have the, the actual, like outside their temples and stuff like that, Dibella herself is, perfect. That's exactly. It's always a variant of,
an attractive, scantily clad woman,
I guess would be the best way you could explain it. I don't really know.
No, that makes sense.
Adjectives for how to explain this statue.
Almost like a Greek goddess.
I was about to say, picture Roman,
Greco-Roman, all one word.
Roman. Yeah, exactly. I just made one. We're all about making words right now. Greek or Roman statues, like the marble statues, it's got that type of feel to it. To give a real world analogy of just something that if you're not on the live stream with the video version, just something you can picture in relation to her statues.
Yeah, she's always depicted as a scantily clad, kind of busty, hippie, voluptuous woman, which makes sense. I mean, in many cultures, that is considered both. It's connected to not only like erotic love, but also motherly love. Both things can be connected to that. So it makes sense. Her symbolism matches the concept. The other thing that we mentioned was the masks, the doll masks in ESO, and I've got a picture of those as well. And I really like the design on this. It's got like a purple and golden or orangey color in the mask, but it has these flowery kind of leaves and movement across them. It's a really cool design, and it's very unique compared to any of the other things that we've seen of hers.
Yes.
But I love a lot of the artwork in the games, especially in ESO. Like every time they do stuff, it just gets better and better. So I love that stuff. Do you have any other thoughts about Dibella, before we get into the types of worship from different areas and different people?
I mean, are we going to go through each of the region's versions of her specifically? I don't know how involved we plan on getting. So,
yeah, we're going to touch on how she's worshipped in like Black Marsh and Cyrodiil, Hammerfell, High Rock,
okay,
Skyrim.
Yeah. Then I don't want to jump too much ahead and then end up like stating something we're planning on covering going forward at least. But yeah, I don't know. She's definitely a very prevalent deity in most of most of the games, very specifically Skyrim. You actually have some pretty interesting quests around Dibella in Skyrim, which if you have not found them and I guess have Skyrim, I don't know who doesn't own Skyrim, that I would definitely suggest checking out, because some of the quest lines involving Dibella or temples of Dibella are pretty entertaining.
Yes, this is one of the things I realized in researching this episode. This image right here that you will recognize from the sides of some of the crypts in Skyrim features a woman, a shapely woman, all in robes. She's not like partially clothed with like just a robe draped over her shoulder or something. But then male priests on, well, I guess it's her right side, our left side, with like a king's sarcophagus, and female priests on her left side with looks like a queen sarcophagus, and then moths rising up from her hands, and then a giant moth at the top of the image. And I'm just going to tease that right now, because this is a thing that I didn't know was connected to what is actually connected to Dibella. And this is from Skyrim. It's one of those murals you'll see on the inside of these crypts all the time. And I think it's really, really cool once you get a sense of like what this actually means. But we'll talk about that towards the end of the episode. So why don't we go ahead and thank our patrons, and then we'll come back and talk about all the different worship in these different areas and all that other stuff. So here we go.
The skies are marked with numberless sparks, each a fire, and every one a sign. So, thank you so much to our patrons. You guys are amazing. There are 48 of you right now. And not only that, but Sea Chaser just upgraded to a tier 5 patron, which means Sea Chaser and Noodle Al Dente get a big thank you for being our tier 5 patrons. And Pie Man is a tier 6 patron. I don't know if he's Akatosh or Lorcan. He's one of the two. Both are pretty potent beings, but yes.
Akatosh.
Holy moly. Thank you to the three of you, and especially thank you to Pie Man. That is huge. If you don't know, that is a $250 patron tier. It's one of the tiers that I put in there as a, well, maybe someday somebody will sign up for this. And he did.
I guess I'm glad Pie Man enjoyed the show.
Yeah, I know, right? It's phenomenal.
Thanks for dropping by. Glad you enjoyed.
Phenomenal. That is amazing. So thank you to all of you. Thank you to all of our patrons, whether you're a $1 subscriber or a $250 subscriber. You're very much appreciated. Thank you for helping to support the show. You are what allow me to be able to continue doing these shows and adding on new shows like the Mass Effect Lorecast and doing my streams and creating content and all the things that I do. So very, very much appreciated. If you're interested in helping to support the show and checking out all the different things that you can get on Patreon, go to patreon.com/Elder Scrolls Lorecast. Even for $1, you can get ad-free episodes and episodes a day earlier. But then, of course, you can get to join us on future episodes of the show, discounts from the merch store where you can get t-shirts and things. There's all sorts of stuff you can get from the different tiers. So go check that out. And speaking of guesting on the show, 2 weeks from now, the week before we talk with Rich, is the 29th. That is the last Thursday of the month. And that will be when we are doing our next patron episode. So if you want to join us for that, you're welcome to. All you have to do is sign up at tier 4 or higher, and then you can join us on that. Otherwise, another fun tip, if you have an Amazon Prime account, you can use that on stream and help support my stream or Lotus's stream or whoever else, because Jeff Bezos doesn't need the money and it's free. You get to support a streamer once a month. So if that's something you'd like to use on the stream, we would appreciate it as well. So that's on Twitch. So if you're on Twitch and you're watching, or you are able to support us there, then thank you, please, and thank you. All right, let's move on with the rest of the show.
Yes, you're entirely brilliant. Conquering madness and all that. Blah, 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 blah.
All right, Lotus, let's talk about the different zones and how they worship them. I don't have these in the order that I want to do them. I'm going to skip over to Cyrodiil first. But worship of Dibella in Cyrodiil. She's something you get in a cereal box. She's like one of the bonus prizes.
Frosted Flakes.
Yeah. So Tony the Tiger worships her in Cyrodiil. And she's venerated by the Imperials of the Providence of Cyrodiil and is featured as a member of the Cyrodiilic Pantheon, of course. This is why we're going through this list, is because these are all part of that Cyrodiilic Pantheon. In Cyrodiil, she has nearly a dozen different cults, some devoted to women, some to artists, and some to aesthetics, like we mentioned earlier, and others to erotic instruction. Notice again, the different preferences you have for how your perspective on her is shaped by your own wants. A chapel of Dibella was located at the city of Anvil in the second and third eras. In the third era, 433, the chapel of Dibella at Anvil was desecrated by Aurorans, Daedra in the service of Meridia, and several of its priests were killed. At this time, way shrines dedicated to the goddess could be found throughout the countryside of Cyrodiil, and a statue of Dibella was located in the Arboretum. These words are difficult.
An arboretum.
Arboretum district of the Imperial City, the capital of the province. So it's not uncommon that you don't come across her all over the place. Like Lotus mentioned, even in Skyrim, you come across her. But if you've played the Elder Scrolls Oblivion, then you will have come across the chapel of Dibella in Anvil.
One other thing, just for the sake of helping, because these are made up words, but they do say it in Elder Scrolls Online. So when, what do you call it? Meridia's Daedra are called Aurorans, would be how you'd pronounce that.
Aurorans.
The only reason I know how to say it, because I'm looking at that spelled out. And when you said it first, I was like, what the? And then it was the Meridia part.
Aurorans.
Yeah, it's Aurorans just because one of the bosses calls in Aurorans to try to kill you. So that's the only reason I know how to say that.
Yep.
Words are hard, especially when they're made up.
Words are difficult. So Cyrodiil, pretty to be expected, worship different ways, like we talked about before. What about places like Blackmarsh? Well, the majority of the population in Blackmarsh are Argonians, and they worship the Hist, or at least they venerate the Hist, and they have a connection to the Hist, and are not as likely to worship the divines the way that, say, the Cyrodiilians would. But worship among the Kothringi, the indigenous humans of Blackmarsh, is known to have been a thing. They've been worshiping Dibella, but they go by the name Dibe, D-I-B-E, I think is the pronunciation.
I guess Dibe.
I guess. And they also worship Mara and Kinnereth, which is interesting, as one of the mothers in the Around Us. Dibella was held in high regard by the Kothringi, and a temple of Dibella was located in the city of Gideon in the Second Era during the Alliance War. So
very neat.
I have to wonder what else we're going to find out about this stuff in the next installment of Elder Scrolls Online coming in June. Yep. So yeah, stay tuned for that. Then we have Hammerfell, right? Hammerfell, Dibella is the patron deity of the region of Tigonus. Did I pronounce that correct?
I've never heard that one spoken that I can think of. So Tigonus sounds as good as anything I would come up with.
Tigonus, maybe?
It could be Tigonus.
And is popular among Redguard women. The Redguards of Hammerfell divided between the Crowns, conservative Redguards, and Forebears, cosmopolitan Redguards, do not universally worship Dibella, and she is only venerated by Forebears who began to accept her into their pantheon under the Cyrodiilic Empire. So basically this means typically Redguards have held to their older Yakutan beliefs, but due to Cyrodiilian connections and the Empire moving into the area, of course, the cultures change as that occurs as well.
Right, and the Forebears definitely have much more imperial influence on them than obviously the Crowns do. So it would make sense that they have adopted Dibella much more into part of their culture than the Crowns, for example.
Right. Right. And then in the late Third Era, temples dedicated to the divine, meaning specifically Dibella, were administered by the House of Dibella, a religious organization dedicated to Dibella and her teachings, and could be found in major urban centers throughout the province. So by the Third Era, it was much more widely spread. Then the House of Dibella was led by a patriarch and was allied to the Benevolence of Mara, a religious organization dedicated to Mara and her teachings. The Order of the Lily was a knightly order dedicated to Dibella, which protected her temples against its adversaries, such as the followers of Sanguine, the Daedric prince of hedonism. You can see here, I think this is interesting, the idea of Sanguine and Dibella, right? Quality love and maybe even erotic love, but then Sanguine and taking that and turning it dark into hedonism. And
yeah,
I think the difference here is, like theoretically or philosophically, would be a high quality love, even an erotic love, would be one where you are giving to your partner, whereas hedonism would be taking for yourself from your partner. The visual act of it may look very similar, but the intentionality is what is different.
Right.
So I think
that's where you have the light and dark versions, the yin yang
of the same thing, potentially.
This. Yeah.
Right. So
exactly.
I think that's actually a really cool, interesting dynamic that is brought up there. Then we have worship in High Rock in the late Third Era. Similarly to Hammerfell, the House of Dibella was responsible for the administration of temples dedicated to Dibella in the province of High Rock, and the Order of the Lily was also active in the province at this time. High Rock and Hammerfell tend to always go hand in hand in a lot of ways because a lot of the cultures are similar. Dibella is the patron deity of the regions of, here we go again, Cogria and Menevia, and is venerated as a member of the Breton pantheon. In the Second Era, the worship of Dibella was criticized and discouraged, notably by Father Pitoff of the Cathedral of Daggerfall, who warned of the charms of Dibella. So you have some connections here. Hammerfell, High Rock, a little bit more Breton area, but still some Red Guards. Like these cultures are right next to each other. So you also have a little bit of that kind of bleeding over into each other. See, Chaser says it's pronounced yin yang. And they're also debating about how many divines there are. I think it depends on what era you're in and what culture you are in. And I don't know. We'll have to talk about that later.
Speaking of the gray, maybe.
Right. Yeah, that's a big question. So let's talk about Skyrim. So in Skyrim, in the totemic religion of Atmora, where the Nords originally came from, the Nedic people, precursors to the Nordic pantheon. And here we go. This is the part I was hinting at before. The silver moth has been considered to correspond with Dibella. And if you take a look at this image again, you'll see that these are moths that are coming off of her. And even in her clothing, the symbols of the moths, the eyes, the eye-like shape in the wings of the moth is echoed in the clothing that she's wearing and the different details of her as this like goddess character. Very interesting. The silver moth. And this is connected to the Nedic culture, which was much more animistic, I think is the phrase, where they connected a lot of these things to animal representations. It goes on and says, this worship continued with the migration to Tamriel and Skyrim, where the Atmoran animal gods eventually became known by their modern names. Dibella is considered one of the hearth gods that watch over the present world as the goddess of beauty. Her worship is varied as individual cults venerate different facets of her spheres of influence. Again, some worshiping certain aspects of her and others worshiping others. In some stories, she is acclaimed as the bedwife of Shor. Who is Shor? Lorcan. Interesting. She's doing it with Lorcan, I guess? Is that what that means?
Doing it with everybody.
Yeah, she's doing it with everybody.
As long as it's meaningful.
As long as it's meaningful and giving and equality. And beautiful. Then she's all about it. In the Fourth Era, shrines dedicated to the goddess can be found both in the wilderness and in urban centers, such as at the Temple of the Divines in Solitude and at the Temple of Dibella in the city of Markarth. At this time, the practice of the Dibellan arts was disapproved of in certain localities and could lead to ostracism. Some Nords are known to consider Jeffrey, there's all they pronounce it with the Jeff with a J, they spell with a J, but they don't like Ephraim is almost always spelled with a Y, but J's are sometimes Y's. Ephraim, god of nature.
How would you say it?
Yeah, god of natural beauty, to be an imitation of Dibella. So there may be some connection there as well. So I know that was a lot to digest. What do you have any thoughts on any of this, Lotus? While I eat some more ice cream.
Yeah. So while you have a snack, the only real thing that I feel is substantially worth like noting is it's pretty widespread that Dibella is very consistently recognized, I guess. Even her versions are similar in from one region to another. I mean, we did mention the crowns don't really acknowledge it, but for the most part, when you're on Tamriel, as opposed to cultures coming to Tamriel, it seems like there's a pretty wide and universal acceptance of a degree to her, which has had similar, but not each of the divines has their own takes. She does as well. Hers, to me, so far have seemed a little more streamlined. Everybody interpretation is pretty similar to the base version that we were talking about. Whereas when we were mentioning Akatosh, or it was a little more variety to it. It's like, oh, he's a cat in this one, and even in, well, I was like, for the example of in Black Marsh, she's not necessarily a Argonian version. I mean, she could be. I'm sure that.
Yeah, but it's mostly
pick that up
Mannish
as well.
People in Black Marsh that worship her. So
they worship her. Right. It's not the beast race scooping up the. So it seems like that just the Mannish culture has what influence they have on different regions. It pretty much carries along suit, and it seems like the variety is a little less extreme with her, at least from what I've seen, learning about all the ins and outs and of Dibella. Yeah,
it's interesting when you look at charts that show the different cultures and the different analog deities. Dibella has almost no. I mean, there's Dibe, which is basically the same thing, but there's not really analogs. You know, you look at Archaea and you see Tuatha. You look at Akatosh and you see. What was his other name? Alkosh, and some of the other names for him. But Dibella's kind of either Dibella or she's not there. Or they replace her with something like Mara, or, you know, there's some other similar deity that kind of holds that spot.
Right. And the tie-in to Mara, which we'll get to when we discuss Mara, makes sense. I mean, they kind of coincide with each other the same way that we briefly brought up Sanguine almost being like diametrically opposed to the situation, because it's like, well, yes, it's the same thing, but it's the other side of that coin type of deal. Mm-hmm. So, yep.
So with some of these, she's a little bit more hands-on, seemingly, or at least a little bit more personally connected than some of these other Aedra.
No pun intended.
Yeah, hands-on. Quality hands-on. She has some items that are connected to her, some artifacts. So there's the Brush of True Paint. The Brush of True Paint is an Aedric artifact supposedly created by Dibella. It is said that the bristles of the brush were woven from Dibella's own hair. The brush allows the wielder to enter a painting canvas and paint things life-size simply by imagining them, which is interesting. I think this has to do with the beauty side of this thing, this artistic beauty side of it. Then there's the Helm of the Crusader, which is one of the Crusader's relics. It was created by Dibella in the early First Era and granted to Pelinal Whitestrake, who didn't give Pelinal something. The Divine Crusader, to allow him to defeat and banish Umaril the Unfeathered, an Ayleid Sorcerer King. Pelinal, despite his victory over Umaril, was slain, and the Crusader's relics were scattered and lost for thousands of years. The helm was placed at the shrine of the Crusader in Vanua? Pelina's Vanua, Pelennel's place of death, where it remained until it was recovered by the champion of Cyrodiil in the Third Era, 433. So some of you guys might remember playing through that as well. The only other thing that I wanted to note here was that Dibella lends her name to a specific beverage called Dibella's Kiss Tea. She also lends her name to a material known as Dibellium, which is kind of cool because it's like in the real world where we have, like the chart of all the elements, and then you've got oxygen and carbon and like all these elements. But then you get down to the bottom and they start naming them like weird stuff with like Roman endings, like Einsteinium and plutonium and like all of those things. Sounds like one of those. Sounds like an element in that table.
Yes, and if you want a specific situation where you use Dibellium, or again, Diabellum, however you want to pronounce this, it's pretty handy because it's in the Elder Scrolls Online, and it's a trait that was added with Somerset, the Somerset expansion, and that's when they brought in jewelry crafting, which was originally not a thing that was in the game. And one of the trait stones, which is Diabellum, it's the harmony trait, which this is a little just very specific game detailing, whether that matters to you or not. And the harmony trait, jewelry, increases your damage, healing, resource restored, and damage of your shield strength by any synergies you activate. So in the game, since ESO is a multiplayer game, you can provide skills to each other that you can activate, and then you get a shared bonus. Oftentimes healers will throw something to me as a tank so that I can continue to do what I'm doing and not die. And
it's because they love you.
And that's why actually using Dibella on my harmony jewelry keeps me alive in my current progress group in Cloud Rest 3, because otherwise I would be dead, as I wouldn't get that 15% bonus. So it's it's neat that it's also, like you said, it's like its own element, and it's got a trading game. So I'd be curious to see, just other uses, because when you have something like that, it's not always universal from one game to another, with alchemy reagents and stuff like that. They're similar type of deal, but it kind of changes sometimes. So I'll be curious to see if going forward, if it ever has any other use, or if just this harmony trait thing would have any merit in a single player game. Elder Scrolls 6, for example. Blah, 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 blah.
I guess we're going to have to wait and see. It's kind of cool though. What the function of it is to create more synergy between you and other people.
Yes,
like a positive quality relationship between you and somebody else, helping each other out.
Some of the how can I put this? Some of the subtleties in ESO, I feel, are lost on a lot of people unless you get into the lore side of things, because oftentimes mechanics, that is a mechanic to the game, but there was obviously a lot of thought put in. Like, what are the odds that accidentally was chosen as like, oh, well, here's your synergy? That was thought out. The idea is to keep, it's one of the things that there's controversy over whether Elder Scrolls Online likes to be considered canon by a lot lot of people. It is.
It is. It absolutely
whether you want to
is. At this
accept
point,
it or not,
it absolutely is. At this point, it's created more lore than any single other game in the series.
I know.
Right?
And things like this, whether it's a nod to a classic game, which there's tons of, or just simple little things like this, like a trait stone on jewelry has a lore implication to it. Like it connects to the divine that it's named after, which is super creative.
Yeah. And Savline says part of the issue is that the more you expand a universe and make up more lore, the more you have to retcon pre-existing lore so it all fits. That is absolutely true. And
definitely,
that is exactly what you would expect for any series to do.
Right.
Because these are not novels written by the same author, which in many cases they have to go retcon things they did in previous works anyway. These are multiple works written by many, many different writers. So you're going to have inconsistencies. So
the writers even haven't been consistently the same group on Elder Scrolls Online alone. There's been shifts. So we've had 2 lore masters over the course of the 7 years the game's been live. So it's like that always changes. And luckily, when you have a series like the Elder Scrolls, you have the ultimate MacGuffin of the Elder Scrolls themselves and Dragon Breaks, which really let you let you make some interesting twists to make things fit and have them hold together.
Yeah, one of my pet peeves with I do multiple lore shows, so this is something that I look at a lot. But there's the community at large. Some of the loudest voices in the community at large will often hold up the "wait a minute, that retcons something," or "wait a minute, this breaks lore from this other thing" flag as a badge of honor, as like, I know that this thing back here said this, and this thing counteracts that. And then they dig their feet in, and they just like, that's the hill they're going to die on. This thing is wrong because that thing is right because it came first. Well, that's not how the creation of lore in video games works. It's not like looking at reality. Like if you do like Bible study, not a Bible study like, what does Jesus tell me I should do about my relationship? Let's read 3 Corinthians. No, not like that. Sure, I mean, like historical, biblical historical study. If you were to all of a sudden dig up an older version of the New Testament, one closer to the original documents that were written, then yes, you can say, well, this one uses this word instead of the other word that's used in all of the other editions. So that means it's from an older source. So it means it's more accurate. You can absolutely do that because all of those sources all came from an original document that then moved through everything else. Video games aren't like that. It's not like the people who created the Elder Scrolls 1 created some sort of canon document with which everything else has to be drawn back to. It's more like the opposite. The most recent lore is the most accurate, and any lore that came before that gets retrofitted is retrofitted out of necessity in order to write better, more engaging stories and create more content for the user base. And if it doesn't work like that, we would get worse and more terrible games, and we would never get new stories, and we would never get anything else. So if I'm going to plant my feet in and die in a hill, it's going to be that one, which I think a lot of people will go, wait a minute, that's not right. But it's the nature of the beast. That's what it is. Like, you cannot look at video game lore like it's, historical exegesis of, documents in the real world. They're similar, but they're very different. So that's my perspective on the whole thing. So there you go.
I was going to say, I don't really have any counterpoints to that because I share a similar thought process.
Yeah. So Savline says retconning offers all kinds of wiggle room moving forward, and it absolutely does. And you don't pigeonhole yourself. You're right.
Yeah. Yep. No, and it's necessary to progress a series forward. Again, a lot of things change in this situation. This is a intellectual property owned by a company, so it needs to evolve. And Bethesda has had kind of a very unique situation where a lot of the people who work there that I've seen or met or whatever, they're there for crazy long periods of time, which is actually also very unique in the video game industry. There's usually a lot of turnover. Yeah. So the fact that I think so much holds strong with this series is a testament to that, because there's, a lot of similar staff, but at the same time, they've grown and expanded. So as a result, the story's grown and expanded. It might not be in a direction you like. That's totally fair.
That's legit. But that's an actually legit complaint.
Right.
Like,
and that's
the subjective
totally
opinion
fine.
of like, I don't like this story compared to the older story. That is
Absolutely.
fine. Like, I don't like the new sequel to the movie series I like the first one better. That's fine. That's not based on any objective fact. That's based on subjective opinion. You're allowed to that. Totally, enjoy your subjective opinions as much as you want. That's great. The flip side of saying like, this is objectively wrong, you can say this objectively differs from the previous lore. That's true. But to say that that's a bad thing or a good thing, it's not either. It's a necessary thing. That's it.
Right. So it's why I generally don't like to deal too much in absolutes, and I always consider what I'm reading to be the newest version of something that I get to learn about, because this is a very, very fleshed out universe in the Elder Scrolls. So yeah, I might have a bunch of experience with the series and everything like that, but I'm constantly, one of the things I like about this show is even when I think I know something, oftentimes I'll find that something's changed since the last thing I knew about it.
Right.
So that's interesting in and of itself while I'm, reading up on the notes to these. So
it's, there's a difference between I don't know if I'm going to label it correctly, classical mindset and a postmodern mindset, in that, and this is something we experience in the real world a lot. The classical mindset says you create a thing. When you're done creating a thing, that thing is complete. It is finished and it is done. You move on. In a postmodern mindset, you're never done creating a thing. Think about software. You go back 30 years and we had to create software. And at some point you had to say, okay, put a pin in it. It's done. Ship it. You send out your floppy disks and you can't patch it. It's too late. You can't make updates. There's no internet. You just put it in the drive. It is a finished product. Today, almost everything works on iterations. Nothing is ever complete. Pretty much nothing. And what's funny about this is that, like, if you're surrounded by physical objects as the things that you manufacture all the time, the things that are constantly made, tables and chairs, cars, food, you go to a certain place and you manufacture that thing and it is done. You use the table and the table is done. That's it. It's a table. But human beings are way more like the postmodern mindset in that we are constantly changing, upgrading, devolving, whatever throughout our lifetimes. We're never done. We're never finished until we're dead. And then we're done. But then we don't exist anymore. But even then, our bodies continue to change over time. Nothing is truly finished. And I wish more people, and I think this is a much bigger topic. I think this is a product of our school system and all sorts of other things, post-industrializing the world. But this idea that if you're going to be active in the world, creating and making and doing, you can't ever consider something done. You don't just make a website and you're done with it. You still update it. You update it all the time. You patch it.
Right.
Video games get patched all the time. Nothing's ever done. That's just the way it goes. So stories get updated all the time. How many times has George Lucas gone back and updated Star Wars? It's not a finished product ever. And some people don't like that because they like to have their hard and fast set thing, and it will always be the same thing. And it doesn't mean it's right or wrong. Like I'm trying to say, you can have your favorite. You can say, I like the original Star Wars version before they added the visual effects. That's great. That's fine. That's totally fine. But the creator wanted to keep evolving it, and that's okay too. So both things are okay is my point.
So
anyway, this became a much bigger topic than I expected.
Yeah, so. This ended up being, but there's we can bring this all back to one of the original things, because I was reading this and I was like, this all seems to actually connect really well. So there was a statement right back at the beginning where no matter the seed, if the shoot is nurtured with love, will the flower not be beautiful? You can take that, bring that right into what we were discussing and say, no matter the topic, if the game is nurtured with loves, will the series not be beautiful? Boom. And there's your Elder Scrolls right back to where we started in a nutshell, or I guess a seed in this case. Right. It's like, just nurture what it is and you'll probably get a good new expansion to the story and series out of it. And see, Dibella even teaches us. Yeah, and if you're going to hold too hard and fast to something, then you're just going to steal from yourself in the ability to enjoy the things that are coming, in the future. Exactly. It's like, don't steal from yourself. Just enjoy things. It's a lot more fun. It's a lot more fun, guys. Anyway, just some thoughts on all that stuff. Lotus, this has been a fun conversation. I hope you guys enjoyed the lore and this kind of other dialogue about this. As with any of this stuff, I'd love to hear your thoughts. You can always tweet at us or jump on. A lot of times we get some great side things that either it's a different take on what we talked about, or just like, oh, well, why didn't you mention this? It's like, that is a good thing we could have mentioned. Touche.
Yeah. So or somebody
definitely let us know.
or maybe I didn't do a good job explaining my perspective, and somebody gets to a conclusion that I didn't intend, and I'm able to clarify, like that wasn't really what I was trying to say. I'm trying to say this or whatever.
Absolutely.
So the conversation's not finished. Let's keep the conversation going. Hey, look how that connected in. So join us on the Discord, the Robots Radio Discord, in order to talk all sorts of fun stuff, or in the chat. Thank you guys for chiming in with some of your thoughts as we do this. So
Absolutely.
Lotus, we've got 3 weeks till Rich shows up and we get to interview him. That's exciting. We've got a Patron episode in a few weeks. We've got one more episode before that. Things are cooking. We're getting closer and closer to the new update for ESO.
Yeah, there's a lot going on. We are actually recording Tales of Tamriel tomorrow because just everything's kind of hectic. A few of us aren't around this weekend, but we're making tomorrow work because because everything was NDA'd last week, it made it very difficult to have a show that anyone but me could talk about because I specifically don't go onto the test servers as I play on console, and I it's more work than I want to do for that. And I'm not going to lie, as much as I like being involved with all this, I do like some of the surprise of stuff. So I keep up to date within reason. Whereas for kind of more of the technical side, both Arc and Pixie were in the Blackwood testing. So they've seen stuff that we couldn't talk about last week. Right. The NDA was just lifted today. So we kind of had to hold off, and we'll be recording tomorrow at 10 instead. So if you are interested in some of the new stuff, as you had mentioned, that's what we'll be discussing on Tales of Tamriel tomorrow. And something that I'm doing on my own Twitch channel, which is open to everybody who listens to anything. My friend Drew from the community, he provided an Xbox code for Blackwood, the expansion. Last time I mentioned this, I don't know, it was a couple months ago. Well, he's provided me another code to give away. So if you play on the Xbox or would like to play on the Xbox, I am doing a giveaway for an Elder Scrolls Online Blackwood code. It will come with the base game and the brand new expansion, and I'm just going to give it away on my stream. I plan on streaming, I believe, it's going to be April 25th. I'll have the exact time of the day that I'll be streaming, but I usually stream, if I can, on the weekends around like 2 or 3 p.m. Eastern. But I personally don't, if you follow me, great, that's awesome. I've been advertising it everywhere, but it's really just for anybody in chat. So if you want to come by and hang out while we play Elder Scrolls, we will be giving away a copy of the Elder Scrolls Online with the Blackwood expansion again. So thank you to Drew for that. And get yourself a chance to win if you're interested in Elder Scrolls Online, or if you already play and just want the upgrade. That also works.
Yeah, totally. If you're an Xbox player, go grab that, because that's sure. Awesome. Well, very, very cool stuff. Let's see. I've got my regular stuff going, streaming in the afternoons, and then also sometimes in the evenings, and then of course all these different shows over at robotsradio.net and our Rocket Club. We've got 10 people signed up on our Robots Radio Rocket Club to help people launch their podcasts and actually find an audience or construct a show that is the kind of show that people will want to listen to, and all that kind of stuff. So it's a lot of fun. We have some really creative people doing all sorts of awesome shows. Go check out the list on the Discord. You can see all the shows that are part of Robots Radio and then also part of the Rocket Club. You can check out all of those shows. There are some Elder Scrolls ones. So go check out that list. And if you want some help launching your own podcast and making sure that it's successful and you're able to find an audience, I'm happy to work with you. I have so much fun working with the different hosts and their creativity and the little things that I can do that end up making a big difference that they just weren't aware of because they hadn't done a show yet. So that's a lot of fun. So go check that out if you'd like to, want some help, launching your own show. So that's what I'm doing. Lotus, this has been super fun. Coming up next is the Dungeons and Dragons Lorecast. That will start at 10:30, so in about 24 minutes. And until then, you can kind of hang out and listen to some Mechanist rap battles on my away screen. And we'll be back next week. Anything else you want to say before we go, Lotus?
No, I was going to say, just have a great week, everybody, and we will talk to you next time.
All right, everyone. stay tuned for Dungeons and Dragons. We'll see you guys next week. See you later. Thanks for listening to the Elder Scrolls Lorecast. If you have something you'd like to contribute to the show, please reach out to us at elderscrollslorecast@gmail.com or on Twitter @ESO Lorecast. I really appreciate you listening, and I'd love to hear from you soon.
You've been listening to a Robots Radio podcast. Smart shows for interesting people. Check out all the shows at robotsradio.net.